Imagine yourself drifting slowly down the ancient Euphrates River. The air is warm, dense with the earthy scent of riverbanks and reeds. The water moves steadily beneath your boat, whispering stories of forgotten cities and long-vanished people. In the distance, the skyline is punctuated not by skyscrapers, but by the step-like forms of ziggurats rising solemnly from the plains. The sun lowers over the Mesopotamian horizon, casting long golden shadows over fields and temples alike. This was the world of the ancient Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, a world where gods walked close and their desires shaped human destiny. Here, in the cradle of civilization, sex was not merely a private affair. It was ritual, it was law, it was power. It was sacred. Tonight, as you settle into rest, we'll journey gently through the lands of ancient Mesopotamia. We will leave behind the noisy bustle of modern life and instead explore the rhythms of temple bells, the chants of priests, and the quiet, constant labor of temple servants. We'll uncover stories of divine love and sacred union, peel back layers of myth, and walk softly through the halls of kings and gods. Let us begin where so many stories in Mesopotamia did not with kings or battles, but with the weary lives of those who served the gods daily in temples large and small. Why it sucked to be a temple servant, rituals, obligations, and fears. Imagine yourself as a young person born in the city of Ur, one of the bustling centers of ancient Sumer. The city is alive with the sounds of animals, traders, and craftsmen, but your life is far from free. Your family has dedicated you to the temple, perhaps as an offering of devotion, perhaps to settle a debt, or perhaps simply because it was expected. From the moment you entered the temple compound, your life was no longer your own. The temple, known as a ziggurat, dominates the cityscape. It is not merely a place of worship, it is the heart of the city's economy, politics, and religious life. You rise before dawn, your day dictated by ritual. Your feet touch the cold, smooth stone floors, and your first task is to prepare for the morning offerings. The smell of incense is thick in the air, mingling with the aroma of freshly baked bread meant for the gods. Every action you take is governed by strict rules. Ritual purity must be maintained at all costs. You must wash your hands and face repeatedly, wear specific garments of linen or wool, and speak only in hushed tones. Mistakes are not simply frowned upon, they are believed to invite divine displeasure, perhaps even disaster. The gods you serve are many. There is Inanna, goddess of love and war, capricious and powerful. There's Enlil, lord of the skies, stern and distant. Each deity has specific offerings and rites, and remembering them all is part of your daily burden. The rhythm of your life is not marked by seasons or holidays, but by a never-ending cycle of sacrifices, chants, and careful observance. Despite the grandeur of the temples, your quarters are modest. You sleep on a simple mat. Meals are sparse, often just leftover offerings, bread, dates, or watered beer. Your body is considered sacred, but this sanctity is not comforting. It means your life is no longer your own. You cannot marry without permission. You cannot leave. Fear is a constant companion. Not fear of punishment by human hands, but fear of omens, of signs from the gods. A cracked liver from a sacrificed animal, a strange pattern in the smoke of incense. These can mean disaster. You are trained to watch for these signs, to interpret them, to avoid divine wrath. Outside, the city continues, but you are removed from it. The temple walls are thick, and they insulate you from ordinary life, its joys, its struggles, even its casual freedoms. Inside, the air is heavy, always heavy with incense, with silence, with expectation. Sometimes visitors come wealthy patrons, priests, or even royalty. You bow, you serve, you remain silent. You're both seen and invisible, a vessel for rituals too ancient to question. And so your life unfolds day after day, season after season. There are no grand adventures, no tales of romance or heroism. There's only the endless, unchanging devotion to gods who demand much and give little. The temple is a place of mystery and power, but also of control, of submission, and of fear. To serve the gods in ancient Mesopotamia was an honor, yes, but for many, it was also a burden. Quietly born beneath the watchful eyes of stone idols and the ever-turning wheels of time. Inanna and Dumuzi, the first love story, passion and death and myth now. Let us drift from the rigid structure of daily temple life into the more fluid, dreamlike world of ancient myth. Myths in Mesopotamia were not simply stories. They were sacred, living narratives recounted by priests, inscribed in clay, and whispered beneath starlit skies. They explained not only the mysteries of the universe, but also the passions and fears of the human heart. Among these ancient tales, one story rises above the rest. It is the tale of Inanna and Dumuzi, a story of love, longing, and inevitable loss. You may think of it as the first recorded love story in human history. Imagine Inanna, goddess of love, fertility, and war. She is radiant, unpredictable, and powerful. Her symbols are the lion, the morning star, and the planet Venus. To worship Inanna was to embrace life in all its sensuality and chaos. She is not a gentle goddess. She is desire itself, intoxicating and dangerous. Her lover, Dumuzi, is a shepherd. He is also divine, a god of vegetation, growth, and renewal. Where Inanna rules the heavens and city walls, Dumuzi roams the open fields. Their union is not just personal, it is cosmic. Their love ensures the fertility of the land, the cycles of the seasons, and the rhythm of life itself. The myth tells us that Inanna, restless and curious, once chose to descend into the underworld. The realm of Ereshkigal, Queen of the Dead, was a place where no living being could go and return unchanged. Inanna clothed herself in divine garments and precious jewels, preparing herself for this perilous journey. At each of the 7 gates of the underworld, Inanna was stripped first her crown, then her necklace, her rings, her robes, until she stood naked before her sister Ereshkigal. Inanna's descent was a symbolic death, a shedding of earthly power. In the silence and gloom of the underworld, Inanna was judged, struck down, and left to hang lifeless on a hook. Above, the world grew barren. Crops withered, animals ceased to bear young, and life faltered. The gods, alarmed, sought to rescue Inanna. Eventually, with clever trickery and divine intervention, she was revived and allowed to return to the land of the living. But the underworld demands balance. No one leaves without sending another in their place. As Inanna returned, her gaze fell upon Dumuzi, lounging comfortably on his throne, surrounded by attendants. He had not mourned her. He had not wept. In that moment, Inanna's eyes blazed with divine fury. With a gesture, she condemned Dumuzi to take her place in the underworld. What follows is a cycle of grief and reconciliation. Dumuzi flees, but he is eventually captured. His sister, Geshtinana, weeps for him and offers to share his fate. A compromise is reached. Dumuzi would spend part of the year in the underworld and part in the world above. Thus, the seasons were born spring and summer during Dumuzi's return, fall and winter when he descends. This myth is many things. It is a tale of passion, of divine love, betrayal, and sacrifice. It is a tale of death and rebirth, mirroring the agricultural cycles that governed Mesopotamian life. And it is a tale of power in Inanna's power to love, to punish, and to control the fates of gods and mortals alike. The erotic dimension of this myth is subtle but ever-present. Ancient hymns describe the courtship of Inanna and Dumuzi with vivid, almost hypnotic imagery. One famous poem, sometimes called the Sacred Marriage Hymn, recounts their union in symbolic terms. Your place is in my heart, O shepherd. My sweet honeyman, Dumuzi, my beloved, let me lie in your lap. To modern ears, these lines may seem like poetry, but to the Mesopotamians, they were liturgy performed during temple rituals to reenact the sacred marriage between the goddess and her lover. This union was believed to ensure fertility and prosperity for all. Through this myth, we see how love, even divine love, was never simple. It brought joy and destruction, abundance and sorrow. Inanna and Dumuzi remind us that in ancient Mesopotamia, desire was never separate from death, and passion was inseparable from power. As the night deepens and you lie resting, consider the echoes of this ancient story. Its themes are older than written words, and yet strangely familiar. Love, loss, and the hope of return, these are the quiet rhythms that have always shaped human life. Sacred prostitution or sacred power? Controversies and mysteries of temple sex rites. As we leave the mythic world of Inanna and Dumuzi behind, we return once more to the earthly cities of Mesopotamia, Ur, Uruk, Lagash, Babylon. Yet the line between heaven and earth is not so clear here. In these places, gods and humans often meet in ritual, and nowhere is this union more mysterious, more debated, than in the temple rites said to involve sacred sex. Imagine yourself standing before the great ziggurat of Eruk, the temple of Inanna rising above the city like a man-made mountain. The bricks are sun-baked and ancient, the walls lined with carvings of lions and stars. Within, incense curls in the air, flickering lamps cast soft light, and the ever-present hum of chanting fills the vast spaces. Among the many duties performed here, one is shrouded in both reverence and ambiguity, the hieros gamos, or sacred marriage. It was said that once a year, the high priestess of Inanna and the king himself would enact a divine union, a ritualized coupling meant to mirror the love of Inanna and Dumuzi. This act was not private. It was ceremonial, symbolic, and so it is believed essential to the fertility of the land and people. But beyond this elite rite, there are accounts fragmentary, sometimes poetic, sometimes secondhand, suggesting that other forms of ritualized sexual activity may have taken place in Mesopotamian temples. Some ancient authors, writing centuries later, claimed that certain women, known as Nadru, Kadishtu, or Ishtarichu, served the goddess through acts of sacred intimacy. The exact nature of their role remains unclear, and modern scholars still debate the meaning of these ancient terms. Were these women priestesses, musicians, dancers, or companions of the goddess in a symbolic sense? Did they engage in sexual rites as a form of devotion? Or were they misunderstood by later outsiders, their roles distorted through the lenses of foreign cultures and moral judgments? Herodotus, the Greek historian writing in the 5th century BCE, famously described a custom in Babylon in which every woman was said to sit in the temple of Ishtar and offer herself to a stranger, once in her life as an act of worship. But Herodotus lived centuries after the height of Mesopotamian civilization, and his account is likely colored by hearsay and cultural bias. More reliable, perhaps, are the clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform that speak of women dedicated to temple service, women who could not marry, who lived apart, and who held roles both revered and constrained. Some were scribes, others weavers, singers, or administrators. Some perhaps were involved in rituals of fertility and divine union. But whether they practiced what we might call sacred prostitution remains uncertain. It is important to pause here and consider the language. The term sacred prostitution is a modern invention, a concept shaped by later religious and social attitudes. For the people of Mesopotamia, the boundaries between sacred and profane, between body and spirit, were not the same as ours. Sexuality, in their view, could be a means of connecting with the divine, of ensuring cosmic order, of honoring the god's own passions. To serve the goddess in this way, if it happened, was not a degradation, but a form of sacred power. Inanna herself was the goddess of love and desire, of fertility and battle. Her rites were not tame, they were ecstatic, wild, and deeply symbolic. There are hymns that celebrate her devotees. They beat the drum for her, they play the flute, in the streets they dance, in the temple they chant. For Inanna they raise their voices, her lovers rejoice in her sacred court. Such words suggest celebration, joy, and reverence. But behind the pageantry, there must have been complexity lives lived in devotion, perhaps caught between veneration and societal judgment, between public ritual and private sacrifice. As you rest now, let your thoughts wander through the quiet corridors of the temple, past the flickering lamps, the woven veils, the worn stone floors. Imagine the lives of those who served Inanna not just in labor, but in spirit and song and love. Their stories are mostly lost, their voices faint echoes, but their presence endures, a gentle whisper beneath the layers of time. In the end, what they truly did may remain a mystery, but what is clear is this: in ancient Mesopotamia, sexuality was not hidden in shadows. It was offered to the gods, woven into myth and ritual, a sacred thread in the great tapestry of life. Priests, kings, and rituals, elite performances of divine love now. Let us shift our gaze from the inner sanctums of temple life to the public sphere, where power, ritual, and spectacle intertwined in the hands of Mesopotamia's elites. Here, in the courts of kings and the halls of high priests, religious devotion took on theatrical form. These were not the quiet rituals of temple servants, but grand performances, carefully choreographed displays in which sex, divinity, and authority merged. Imagine a festival day in the city of Uruk. The streets are lined with onlookers. Flowers and branches are draped over doorways. Music, soft and rhythmic, echoes from the temple precinct. In the ziggurat's courtyard, priests and priestesses move in stately procession, their garments embroidered with symbols of the gods. And at the heart of the spectacle stands the king, not merely a ruler, but the earthly representative of divine will. The central event is the Hyros Gamos, the sacred marriage. This ritual, held during the New Year festival or at times of crisis, was not a private ceremony. It was a reenactment of the union between Inanna and Dumuzi, a moment believed to renew the cosmos, to bring fertility to the land and legitimacy to the king's rule. The king would enter the temple and symbolically unite with the goddess, often embodied by the high priestess. The ritual involved offerings, chants, and, it is believed, a symbolic consummation. Whether this act was literal or metaphorical, it held immense importance. Through it, the king became more than a man. He became the vessel of divine love, the guarantor of life's renewal. This rite was not solely about passion, it was about control. The gods' favor was seen as essential to the well-being of the kingdom. Without their blessing, crops might fail, enemies might prevail, and the delicate order of society could collapse. The ritual assured the people that the king was chosen, beloved by the gods, and capable of maintaining harmony between heaven and earth. The high priestess, too, wielded power through this rite. Known by the title Antu, she was a figure of both spiritual and political significance. Often drawn from noble families, she lived apart from ordinary society, dedicated to the goddess, yet deeply involved in state affairs. One of the most famous high priestesses was Enheduanna, daughter of Sargon of Akkad. She was not only a priestess but also a poet, the first known author in history to sign her name. Enheduanna composed hymns to Inanna, blending personal devotion with political loyalty. In her writings, she describes herself as the beloved of Inanna, as one who channels the goddess's power. Through ritual, through poetry, through presence, she enacted a form of sacred authority, subtle yet profound. Imagine the atmosphere during one of these rituals, the flickering of torches, the low chant of priests, the scent of myrrh and cedar smoke wafting through the air. The king and priestess, adorned in ceremonial garb, move with solemn grace. Each gesture is symbolic, each word part of an ancient litany. the people watch, hushed, believing that this union sustains the very fabric of life. Beyond the temple, the king's palace is also a stage for ritualized power. There, surrounded by courtiers and scribes, the king oversees offerings to the gods, consults omens, and issues decrees inscribed in cuneiform. The court is not just political, it is sacred. Every act, even those of daily governance, is imbued with divine significance. Among the king's duties is the patronage of temples and festivals. He commissions statues of gods, dedicates lands to their service, and funds the great rituals that link city and cosmos. In return, the gods, through dreams, omens, and oracles, confirm his right to rule. The elite performances of divine love were more than religious events. They were tools of governance, woven into the very structure of Mesopotamian society. By embodying the gods' desires, the king and priestess reinforced their own authority, while also offering reassurance to the people. Life would continue. The gods were pleased. The cycle remained unbroken. As you lie quietly now, let your thoughts drift through those ancient halls, where rulers walked among incense and stone, where every action echoed with cosmic purpose. In Mesopotamia, love was not only sacred, it was political, a binding force that connected gods and men, earth and sky. Love, control, and the law, marriage and sex in Hammurabi's code. As we leave behind the grand rituals of temple and court, we descend once again into the everyday lives of ordinary people, the farmers, merchants, artisans, and laborers who filled the cities and villages of Mesopotamia. For them, love and sex were not matters of ritual pageantry, but of law, custom, and survival. And in this world, few things govern life more strictly than the law. Imagine yourself in Babylon around 1750 BCE, walking along dusty streets under the watchful gaze of towering walls and temple spires. The city hums with activity traders haggling, children playing, animals bleating. At the center of this orderly chaos stands a great stone stele, its surface carved with rows upon rows of cuneiform script. This is the code of Hammurabi, an enduring symbol of Mesopotamia's deeply regulated society. The laws inscribed here are detailed, exacting, and deeply revealing. They offer us a window into how the Mesopotamians understood marriage, sex, and personal relationships, not as matters of the heart, but as contracts, obligations, and social duties. Marriage in Mesopotamia was not a private affair. It was a legal agreement between families, often arranged and sealed with a bride price, a payment from the groom's family to the bride as. The bride herself was not sold, but the transaction underscored the transfer of responsibility and the value placed on her future role. Marriage was about lineage, inheritance, and honor. The Code of Hammurabi outlines these concerns with stark clarity. For example, if a man takes a wife and does not draw up a contract with her, that woman is not a wife. In other words, without legal formalities, there was no marriage. Love might exist, but it was the law that defined legitimacy. Infidelity, particularly on the part of women, was treated harshly. One law declares, if a woman is caught lying with another man, they shall bind them and cast them into the water. Such punishments seem severe to modern sensibilities, yet they reflect a society where lineage and property depended on clear lines of inheritance. Control over women's sexuality was tied directly to control over wealth and status. Men, on the other hand, were allowed more leeway. A husband could take a concubine or visit a temple prostitute without legal penalty, provided his wife retained her rightful place in the household. The double standard was embedded in law, a reflection of deeply ingrained social hierarchies. Yet there were also protections for women. If a husband neglected his wife, if he failed to provide food or clothing, she could seek a divorce. Widows had rights to their husband's estate. Daughters could inherit property, and legal texts show that some women, especially those from higher classes, managed their own affairs with notable autonomy. Sexual crimes, rape, incest, or seduction were similarly codified. Penalties varied according to the status of those involved. Harm to a highborn woman carried heavier consequences than harm to a slave. The law was not only about morality, but about social order. Even within the temple, these laws held sway. Women dedicated to the goddess Nedru priestesses were forbidden to bear children. If they broke this vow, punishment followed. The body, in this context, was not only sacred but regulated, a vessel shaped by divine and legal authority. It is important to note that love, in the romantic sense, is rarely mentioned in these texts. The law focused not on emotions, but on actions, consequences, and duties. Yet among the rigid rules, we glimpse traces of personal lives, of marriages that thrived or failed, of desires pursued or denied. A tablet from Nippur records a letter from a wife to her husband, away on business. She writes of missing him, of longing for his return. Another tablet preserves a song sung by a bride. My heart is glad, my limbs are light tonight, I enter the house of my beloved. Such fragments remind us that beneath the heavy weight of law, real people lived and loved. They found joy in each other, within the confines of rules, and sometimes in spite of them. As you rest now, consider how these ancient people, bound by laws and customs, still sought connection, intimacy, and tenderness. Their world may seem distant and strange, but their desires, their longing for love, for belonging, for a place in the order of things, are timeless, quiet echoes that still stir the heart. Desire is divine, when love ruled from the temples, and now we arrive at the final part of our journey, where desire so often restrained by law and ritual is reimagined not as a danger to be controlled, but as a sacred force, a bridge between the mortal and the divine. In ancient Mesopotamia, love and sex were never merely private matters. They were woven into the fabric of religious life. Desire itself was seen not as a base impulse, but as a gift from the gods, a force to be honored, respected, and channeled. Let us return once more to Inanna, the radiant goddess of love and war. Among her many titles, she was called Queen of Heaven, Lady of the Largest Heart, and simply the Lover. She embodied beauty and strength, but more than that, she was the very essence of desire, passionate, unpredictable, creative. Her temples were places of music and movement. Hymns to Inanna speak of drums and lyres, of dancers circling in her honor. These were not somber spaces of quiet prayer, but vibrant centers of communal celebration, where the sensual and the sacred met without shame or fear. In these sacred spaces, human love was mirrored after divine love. Rituals, songs, and even gestures were modeled on the mythic union of Inanna and Demoshi, whose embrace brought life to the land. Desire in this view was not sinful or forbidden. It was the lifeblood of creation, a sacred energy that connected all things. One ancient hymn proclaims, "You are the light of the world, Inanna. You stir the hearts of men and gods alike. In your embrace, life awakens. Through your love, the earth yields its gifts." These verses suggest a worldview where to love, to touch, to desire was to participate in the divine. The human body, so carefully regulated by laws and customs, was also seen as a site of sacred experience, a reflection of the gods themselves. This reverence extended beyond Inanna. Other deities, too, held sway over love and intimacy. Shamash, the sun god, watched over vows and marriages. Nanch, goddess of dreams, guided lovers in the night. The gods did not condemn desire, they lived it, shaped it, and through it, governed the rhythms of the world. Even dreams were considered messages from the divine. A dream of union, of longing, might be interpreted as a sign and invitation from the gods, or perhaps a reminder of one's role in the grand order of creation. Dream tablets found in excavations show how carefully people interpreted such visions. seeking guidance and meaning in the gentle language of sleep. In this sacred vision, the act of love was more than pleasure. It was a form of worship, a reenactment of divine harmony. When two people joined in love, they echoed the union of Inanna and Dumuzi. When a child was conceived, it was seen as a blessing not only from parents, but from the gods. Of course, not all could access this sacred dimension. Many lived lives of hardship, bound by duty and law. But in poetry, in song, and in ritual, the people of Mesopotamia reached for something higher, a vision of love that was eternal, holy, and deeply human. As you rest now, let your mind wander through those ancient temples where lamps glowed softly and music filled the air. Imagine the gentle hum of voices, the warmth of bodies gathered in celebration, the soft rustle of linen, the scent of cedar and rose. This was a world where desire was not feared, but honored, a sacred current flowing through all of life. And in this quiet, distant world, we find a simple truth, that love, in all its forms, connects us to each other, to the divine, and to the timeless mystery of existence. Whispers of the sacred past, and so as our journey draws to a close, we leave behind the ancient cities of clay and stone, the ziggurats and temples, the bustling markets and quiet homes, the riverbanks, where reeds swayed in the breeze, and the distant hills where shepherds once called to their flocks. We have glimpsed a world where gods and mortals live side by side, not in physical form, but through ritual, myth, and the ever-present sense of the sacred. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, desire was not banished to shadow. It stood in the light of temples, celebrated through hymns, honored in law, and woven into the very fabric of life. The people of that time did not divide the sensual from the spiritual, nor the body from the soul. To them, the act of love could be divine, a reflection of cosmic order, a reenactment of the passion between goddess and god. Whether in the high courts of kings, the veiled chambers of priestesses, or the humble homes of farmers, desire carried with it echoes of creation itself. Of course, life then was not easy. For many, it was a life of constraint governed by rules, shaped by duty, and shadowed by fear of divine displeasure. Yet even within those boundaries, people sought connection, comfort, and meaning. In their songs and stories, their rituals and laws, they sought to understand the great mysteries, love, loss, fertility, and death. As you lie quietly now, perhaps already drifting into sleep, consider how little has truly changed. We too seek meaning in love. We too wonder about the forces that shape our lives. The people of Mesopotamia lived long ago, and yet they were not so different from us. Their hopes, their fears, their desires, they still linger, soft as whispers beneath the layers of time. Tonight, as the world outside fades into stillness, let yourself rest in that ancient rhythm, the slow turning of seasons, the ebb and flow of river and life, the eternal dance of love and longing. Let the distant echoes of sacred chants and soft footsteps in temple halls soothe you. You are safe now, far from the demands of kings and gods, far from the rituals and laws of another time. Wrapped in quiet, you can rest, knowing that even in the oldest stories, the search for connection, for peace, for love, has always been with us. Sleep well, and may your dreams carry you gently along the rivers of the past.